It's time to pick a side. The border war is on the air with BG and TanMan.
All right, everyone, welcome into another week at the Border War. I'm the TanMan. I am here with BG. College football is underway, but before we get into that, we just want to give thanks to the listeners, as they say in Russia, spasibo. Thank you.
Spasibo.
Spasiba.
Spasiba?
Spasiba.
Did you learn that from Ivan Drago?
Well, we've got a large Russian following.
Do we?
I imagine at some point we may be under Russian rule, so I figured I better brush up.
No comment.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe on any one of the various platforms we are on out there. Tell your friends. Spread the word. BG, college football is underway.
And spasiba for that.
Yes.
Yes. I was sitting in my house on my new sectional couch, which was very difficult to get from rooms to go, might I add.
I love a sectional couch.
Well, you haven't been over and seen mine. I sent you a picture, but this one has cup holders and motorized reclining, and it has these really tacky blue track lights you can turn on, which light up your cup holder and the floor in case you need to get up in the dark. But you can turn those off if it's too much for you.
You can't hide money, baby. My man's couch has got lights on it. You can't hide money.
Once your couch... Well, I thought it was really tacky, which is why I was drawn to it.
No, man, that sounds awesome.
I started to tell you that you could come over and watch it, but that was before I discovered that Big Brother was on, and you couldn't be bothered to watch college football.
No. I shut everything off when Big Brother is on.
Apparently so, including the beginning. Now, would you shut off college basketball if it was up against the first North Carolina game of the season versus Big Brother? Come on, man. Don't even play with me. Don't even play with me. So I was up at like 6 o'clock Saturday morning. I got up and I took a shower and I got all ready. And I'm just sitting on my couch and I start flipping through my sling, looking for college football. And I'm like, I don't think there's any on yet. And I couldn't even find like the pre-game. Remember, there used to be a warm-up show for College Game Day. They don't really do that anymore. They go straight from Sports Center.
It's called Sports Center.
Yeah, so I watched the SEC network for a while, and by the time South Carolina kicked off at noon, man, I was a rabid mess. I was already tired, but I did not make it through halftime of the 3:30 kick. I was asleep. I was asleep. I think I fired off a little too early on Saturday, but needless to say, BG enjoyed his Labor Day weekend with some football.
Well, with everything going on, BG, you had a lot of big-time performances. You had a few duds. Who was it that impressed you the most that first weekend?
I think off the bat, I don't know, let's give a nod to both our in-state teams. I think South Carolina and Clemson both looked really sharp. I don't think that's a surprise for Clemson. We expected them to look sharp.
Nationwide.
Big picture. I think Virginia Tech caught my notice a little bit. I didn't expect Florida State to have a great season. I wasn't on that bandwagon, but I did think that game would be very competitive. Virginia Tech's defense, to me, looked a lot faster than I thought. We talked about this on the show, that we hear Bud Foster, right? And you expect him to be good at special teams and whatever, but it's been a long time since I've seen Virginia Tech kind of heat-seeking to the football the way I saw last night and really lighten some guys up. So Virginia Tech stood out to me. And I think you have to say LSU, right? I mean, I still don't buy it, but it's week one, and that's all we've got to go on. So I think what basically that proved is that Miami is a paper tiger.
Yeah, well, I tell you what jumped out at me, number one, was not that we didn't expect them to be good, but Ohio State hanging 77 without Urban Meyer. I thought maybe there'd be a little bit of a hangover.
That's an angry football team.
No, they're not. You hit it on the head. They're angry. The other one, Oklahoma. I expected Florida Atlantic.
I thought they would really fall off.
I thought Florida Atlantic would go in and not necessarily win the game, but I thought they would at least show well, give Oklahoma a run from. They did not, man. Oklahoma steamrolled
And not to take anything away from this team, but let's back off on this Notre Dame stuff. Okay, you beat Michigan.
Is Michigan your least impressive pick of the week?
Michigan's exactly why. I mean, I made the mistake of picking them last week because I thought that their quarterback situation was what the national media has been telling me it is. This is the same team that lost to South Carolina in a bowl game that they had won.
Well, I'm sure Michigan is Braylon Edwards' least impressive team of the week, if you've seen that.
I'll tell you who else I think is pretty unimpressive so far, and that's Texas.
Golly,
you lose to Maryland again. Listen, Maryland is, get this now, in the past 10 years or so versus ranked teams, I saw some stat, and this is the joy of the border war. I mean, I'm probably wrong about this, and I don't care. They're like 2, I know that number's right, 2 and let's say 20 versus ranked teams in their last 22 games. Both those against Texas.
Well, I'll tell you, my least impressive team of the week, and we're going to just jump right into it. It's got to be the North Carolina Tar Heels, BG.
You made a game out of it.
Well, there at the end, I know you said you dozed off around 3:30 or so you missed all the exciting action in the first half of that North Carolina Cal game.
The turnover fest.
Let me read some stats to you. First half, 38 yards, 1 first down, 3 interceptions. Every drive in the first half lasted 3 plays. They did not have a single drive that lasted more than 3 plays.
How much of this is the shoe scandal?
I don't think a lot of that. I don't think
you
a lot
have
of it
your
is.
Quarterback, right?
No, but he has played well before. They threw some little dink passes.
Is this the kid that started some last year as well?
Toward the end of last year, they threw some little dink passes their last drive, and if not for those little dink passes, I don't know that he would have had more.
So you feel like the defense was giving them yardage?
Honestly, I thought the defense was no. In the second half, the offense picked things up. Like Larry Fedora said, they just started executing a little more.
It ended up 24-17, right? So it was a one-score game, no matter what else.
The offense started picking things up a little bit more.
We gave you guys credit for that all last year, that you showed fight in every game you lost, whether or not you lost it. So that is good to see, that they didn't wave a white flag. It's a terrible trip to begin with, man.
That's a rough trip.
Flying out to California on Labor Day weekend, you haven't played a real game yet. What was the crowd like? Because I didn't see it. Because I did notice one game I want to talk about that really surprised me.
I mean, half empty.
Did you see any footage from the UCLA?
No.
Okay, so, they play in the Rose Bowl.
Uh-huh.
Beautiful stadium, right? Chip Kelly making his debut, which I don't know about you, but very little noise about that. Right? I mean, I had almost forgotten it.
Yeah.
Nobody in the stands, TanMan. I mean, I'm saying 10,000 to 15,000 people, tops. And that's a big stadium. It looked empty. I was shocked.
Honestly, I think that's I guess unless you're Oregon or Washington or Southern Cal, I think that's kind of par for the course out there in the Pac-12. I mean, you see a lot of those games, and a lot of those stadiums are empty. But
I noticed attendance being down sort of across the board. Now, I actually heard an unofficial report, and I don't know if that a fan in Columbia Saturday had a heat stroke and ended up passing away at the hospital the next day. The heat index apparently in Williams-Brice was about 104 in the stands. I'm assuming it was just as bad in Death Valley. I'm going to cut a pass to those guys that bowed out early, because that is a miserable feeling. Yeah, you and I went to that North Carolina game. Was it in 2013 in Columbia to kick off the season? Right. And that's about as hot as I've ever been in my life.
But like you said, second half, the offense started coming their own. Elliott they kind of got a little more creative, let him run some. I thought the defense is usually the Larry Fedora Achilles heel. The defense did a fantastic job.
Well, they shut them down completely in the second half, right?
Well, in the first half, they went in halftime down 17-0. I think in the first half, the defense gave up 10 points, and the one touchdown they gave up was on a short field after one of the 94 picks that they had.
Yeah.
But so defensively, I thought they had a good showing. You could tell they weren't a lot of big plays from Cal. It was a lot of little by little. They ran the ball really well, and so without those big chunk plays, it tells me the communication is is up to par on there.
This wasn't a game we expected them to win.
Well, I expected them to win because without this, I mean, now it's very early in the season, but without this is a team that, I mean, let's be honest, I think they had a little more talent than Cal. And if you line their stats up, team stats side by side, they're almost identical.
Okay.
Even minus the turnovers.
I guess I'm stuck on that trip. I'm just stuck on that flying out there.
And the big thing, and this is something that a lot of the Larry Fedora haters that are out there like to hang their hat on, for a coach that is so meticulous about every little thing in the program and being disciplined. Saturday they had 13 penalties for 124 yards. I mean, that's
a lot.
This is consistently, during Fedora's tenure, one of the more penalized teams in the country. I mean, if they're going to get right and make a season out of this, that's got to change.
Well, in a close game, when you're even with talent and on the road, North Carolina isn't going to be in any games this year where they can afford 100 yards and penalties.
No, and some of them were at bad times. So, they got a winnable game we'll talk a little bit more about later. Hopefully that stuff gets cleaned up. Let's move on to the Clemson Tigers, BG. What do you think about the Clemson-Furman?
I think both of us wish they had covered the spread.
Well, according to that offshore site, they fell 1 point short of covering the spread. So maybe they know more than my spread-making abilities.
Well, as soon as we made those calls last week, I heard a lot of guys on the radio saying they didn't expect Clemson to cover that spread, that Clemson typically doesn't beat up on teams past about 50 points.
They do?
I don't know. I'm just going. I'm going with what the local media told me.
We know how reliable they are,
especially when it comes to Clemson. I thought the defense looked exactly as advertised. Right? I mean, fast, disruptive, violent. Furman in the first half, I think, basically did nothing with the football,
which is not surprising.
Not surprising at all.
I think we expected.
And I'm not going to say that Clemson has a Jalen Hurts to a Tukalavoya situation, but I do think Clemson has a quarterback situation, TanMan, and Kelly Bryant is not their best quarterback. And I think, other than the fact that he is the more mobile of the two quarterbacks, and Dabo can still say that he's going to start them both or play them both, that's going to be a more and more difficult scenario. The offense did not look nearly as smooth with Kelly Bryant, and I think most Clemson fans agree with me.
Well, Trevor Lawrence came in, fourth series, he played. Bryant played the first quarter, he played the second. They both played a little bit in the third.
They traded 3 series each in the first half.
They both played a little in the third before they gave way to, what was his name? Bryce. It doesn't matter. We'll never call his name again.
Right.
I think every drive with Trevor Lawrence ended in points. If I'm not mistaken.
Kelly Bryant started both halves with 2-3 and out to start the first half and the second.
2 turnover on downs to start the game and the second half. You're right. I mean, you're calling for a. I mean, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're calling for a full-on quarterback change.
I just think I don't know if it's right now. I don't know that I would start Trevor Lawrence going into a 12th man situation at Texas A&M on the road.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough place to get your first start. But, I mean, if everything Dabo says is true, and, I mean, Dabo not known to puff up players. He's known to tell the brutal truth. Wait.
Oh, yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
Okay. He says that Trevor Lawrence is mature beyond his years, and he spends lots of time looking at film. I mean, he didn't – and maybe I need to pump the brakes a little on both these guys. It's one football game, and it was against Furman. But I thought their offense looked a little jerky at times. They hit the big play pretty frequently.
Yeah.
Throwing the ball up into the air, and Clemson receivers just getting behind the coverage. But, we've talked about this every year. Clemson is not one of those teams that plays to their competition very well, and neither is South Carolina. I think both of these teams have pretty good football teams to have put that kind of a beat down on teams. And I did expect, though, Kelly Bryant to go out there with a little more to prove. He has to hear this talk. Now, he even admitted over the weekend, I think, or maybe last week in an interview, said out loud that he had considered transferring. I mean, he said that out. I mean, that shocked me that he would admit that the Clemson machine allowed that to get out. Yeah. But it did.
I tell you, you hear a lot about, everyone wants to jump on these things on Mondays. What did we learn after? Right. I don't think that we really learned a whole lot. I mean, what is there to? You were going to beat Furman by a lot, a lot to a little. Honestly, between you and me and the 1,500 listeners we have, I expected a few more points. Now, I know, what was it, 48, 49? I know that's they
a good definitely many. Took the foot off the gas, though.
I was expecting
70,
close to 60 at the very least.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think you've got a quarterback decision to make. I agree with you. I don't know that I would pull the trigger now, but if they go into Texas A&M Saturday with dividing the work up like they did this past weekend, and
I don't think anybody's expecting to see that, are we? Are we really expecting to see 50-50 snaps?
I mean, I mean, what are you going to do?
I don't know. That's what I'm getting at. It's.
I think it'll be. Okay. I think it'll be pretty close to 50-50 because otherwise, unless one guy is just really struggling.
I think maybe you start off that way, and then by the second half, you've got a starter.
Yeah,
and it might be the end of that. I mean, we'll see.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think this Saturday, if Trevor Lawrence goes out there,
don't you feel like Kelly Bryant's got to be feeling a little more pressure than just going out there and winning a game, though, right? I think he has to beat the perception that defense is winning games for him, and he's handing the football off and running with his feet. I mean,
I think for a guy like Kelly Bryant, who has been in big games now all last year, went to a college playoff game, I think it felt a little weird because there was pressure Saturday.
Sure.
I mean, there was. I think it probably felt a little weird for him looking across and seeing Furman instead of Alabama or Florida State or Miami, and having that pressure on him. Now this Saturday is going to be Trevor Lawrence's first real test.
And this is a test.
And if he answers that bell and the offense is still just kind of like you called it, looking a little shaky, maybe Dabo's got a Jalen Hurts to a Tagovailoa,
and the added layer of.
I guess my question is, would
I think it's okay to ask Dabo about it, though.
Would Dabo pull the trigger on it? That's if they were still just kind of a toss up after Saturday, or say 2 or 3 weeks from now. Would Dabo pull the trigger, or would he still?
I think he will.
You think so?
I think he has.
I think I'm
changed.
I'm still going to say until Kelly Bryant is the absolute reason they lose a football game, and then they get to the point where, okay, we don't have any more wiggle room, then I think Bryant still stays a starter.
Well, I'll put it this way. If Clemson really wants to be a perennial national championship team, you have to be the kind of coach that pulls the trigger.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
Your Gamecocks, Saturday, covered the spread.
They did.
They covered the spread.
Shocked me.
One big time, the offense. There were a lot of questions about how the Brian McClendon offense would look.
Yes, it was Coastal Carolina, but the most yardage in the Muschamp era.
Well, I was going to say, I thought they only had 2 drives longer than about 3.5 minutes. And those two drives they had were long scoring drives. One of the slower teams in the country last year. They were in the bottom 10 in kind of pace. They picked it up Saturday. If you're a Gamecock fan, you got to like what you see.
I'll tell you what I really paid attention to. I don't know if you remember the drive right before halftime. And there is I was in my head, I was thinking about Kurt Roper and how things would look. And I saw several people tweet it, like at halftime. They're like, if this was Kurt Roper, we'd be winning 13-10. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it. But we got the ball back, and I'm wanting to say there were like 54 seconds left on the clock. Man, we ran 6 plays, went down the field, and scored a touchdown.
35 yards.
And that, to me, was the hurry-up we've been talking about. I don't think we really, really saw the hurry-up. What I saw was Bentley hurrying everybody to the line, then sort of surveying the defense, and then basically choosing a play at that point.
He's been around long enough that he should be able to do that. That should be part of his responsibility.
I didn't see Jake throw a bad pass the whole game. He was throwing a catchable ball. He was throwing smart passes. Had a nice little improv touchdown. I thought the defense actually looked really good. Held Coastal to 69 yards of total offense in the first half. Most of the points that were scored were off of stupid 15-yard penalties, one of which I had a real problem with, the quote-unquote late whistle play. If you go back and watch that play, which kept that drive alive and cost us 3 points, it's pretty clear that the Coastal Carolina offensive line was no more aware of a whistle than the South Carolina defensive line was. DJ Wanham beats the left tackle off the line. The left tackle blocks him all the way to the quarterback and then has a problem that the quarterback got hit. I know if you're the ref, if you blew the whistle, okay, you have to call it.
So you got to call something.
But bottom line is a lot of those points came off those penalties. Muschamp says we're going to work on that.
Well, I tell you mentioned Jake throwing the ball. I thought they did a really nice job of giving him plays and putting him in situations where he could complete easy passes. They didn't take a ton of shots downfield.
No.
It was a lot of,
and they say they're going to.
They say they're going to, but it was a lot of underneath stuff. What I really liked was everybody and their brother hated Kurt Roby, and the offense was just, they really got creative, because if you look back, you had Debo Samuel lining up at running back. You had
I love the 4th and short play where you put Debo at tailback.
Yeah.
Everybody on the defense is watching him, and you put your starting running back at fullback, and nobody even sees him there. You hand it to him, and he gets a first down. Stuff like that gives me hope.
I guess that's the kind of stuff, though. Was it wise to put that in and put that on tape now, or should you have just saved that for Georgia?
Maybe the idea is when you've got Debo in the backfield, how many times do you think you're going to run it and never give it to him? You know he's going to get it. It's like the Wildcat play back when Kentucky beat us, running that kid.
That's all they ran
and over, and we just couldn't stop it. If Debo is in the backfield, he's going to get the attention, right?
Oh, well, yeah.
He's going to get the attention.
He better. The other thing,
the running game was impressive. They rushed the ball consistently. I think they were right at 50-50 on passes and rushes, and Muschamp and McClendon preach that all the time, that we want to be balanced, that's what we're trying for, that we really try to be as close to 50-50 on runs and passes as we can be. Again, though, it was Coastal Carolina who started nothing but freshmen and sophomores.
Well, speaking of freshmen and sophomores, what's your take on some of you young guys? Because I counted, looking at the list, about 18 true freshmen or redshirt freshmen. They got some run out there Saturday.
It's amazing how long we've been saying that South Carolina is one of the youngest teams in the country, but they sort of continue to be so. I think where you actually have some upper-class depth are on both lines of scrimmage now, and I think that bodes well for the season. We got tons of guys down there, most of them recruited along those lines that you will play early. I love, by the way, that Josh Belk, who had just been cleared, I texted you that picture. The man looks like a walking ice box.
2 days before, wasn't it?
Yeah, cleared 2 days before. Probably not in prime playing shape. I think that I've read reports that he's weighing in at about 370 pounds right now.
Holy cow.
The first time he gets on the field, man, he takes one hand and just tosses the right guard out of his way and just plugs the running back. Just takes him to the ground effortlessly, stands back up, no hands on his hips. The kid's he's not ready to play multiple snaps, but if we have to take Clemson leftovers to get guys like him, I'm fine with it.
That's a big old boy. Georgia coming to town this week. Give me something to watch for it.
I think you watch the running game for South Carolina. I think our ability to run the ball is actually what's going to spell success or failure. I don't think as much as you've heard about our receivers, if our running game isn't able to consistently get yards on first down and get 3rd and 3s for first downs.
If you wind up in a bunch of 3rd and 9s, that's a recipe for a long day.
And with everything else in games like this, I think I think it's going to be about turnovers and chunk yardage. Special teams could win this game. A punt return for a touchdown, a kickoff return for a touchdown. I think it's going to be a very close game. Very close. One way or the other.
Clemson and Texas A&M, I'm interested to see. We just hit on it. How they divide up those snaps and whether or not either Bryant or Lawrence is able to separate themselves from the other.
And then there's the Jimbo Fisher slant to this. I mean, other than Will Muschamp, is there a coach in college football that wants to beat Clemson worse than Jimbo Fisher does?
I would think not.
I mean but he's got to be up there.
Well, of all the people you could put on the schedule or you have on the schedule as a non-conference opponent, they've got the guy who, other than maybe Muschamp, Jimbo Fisher is probably the most familiar with that Clemson football team than other than Nick Saban.
Yeah.
In the country.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, this game obviously was probably scheduled 4 or 5 years ago. I don't think they saw that part of it coming.
It's weird how it worked out.
Yeah.
And for the Tar Heels, what I want to see next week.
And A&M looked good.
They did.
They looked good.
North Carolina, what I want to see, I just want to see, number one, I want to see a win. I want to see a first down in the first half, but more than that, we need to see a cut down on those penalties, man. It's for too many years, for too long. The story on these Fedora teams has been, discipline questions. 13 for $124 against a team that you really should have beaten.
Everybody knows what you want to see. You want to see October roll around and a night with Roy come up on your calendar. That's what you want to see.
Always. It never stops.
You are not worried about the rest of this stuff.
All right, guys.
How's North Carolina lacrosse doing this season? Are they having
fantastic.
A good season? I figured so.
They were awesome. The best.
A buddy of mine that lives up in North Carolina texted me a picture the other day of a guy in a bar wearing a Duke lacrosse shirt. I'm like, that guy's got a set. I almost want a Duke lacrosse shirt.
I'm just going to leave that one right there. Make sure that you like and share our posts on Facebook. Tell your friends about the show. Follow us on Twitter at The Border War. We will be doing an NFL segment next, so make sure you click on that link. We'll do our picks
to the
list.
Redskins.
We'll do our picks list on the NFL segment. So we got more college football talk, also some NFL talk coming up. Go click the link. Turn off the radio, click the link.
Don't listen to the local radio. They're probably still talking about the World Cup.
I heard one guy
pro wrestling.
I heard one guy the other day say they suck. Their analysis was they suck.
Zach Son.